Whether you like the show or hate the show, you have to think to yourself when watching this intro, how in the world and why did James Gunn think of this? Regardless, doesn't matter, I love it. What is up, DC fans? Welcome back to my channel. You guys have been asking, and part of me was thinking about not even making a video on Peacemaker episodes 1, 2, 3 and waiting until the end of the season, but I said, you know what, there's actually a lot more to deconstruct here than I anticipated, and this show is one of those. I started episode 1, and my goal was to just watch 1, but then I watched 2 and 3, and I said, you know what? Let's make a video. So that's what we're going to do. If you guys are here and you like these more lengthy and spoiler-filled reviews, let me know. Drop your thumbs up down below to support this channel and leave your comments. What do you think about this show so far, and where do we go from here? Spoiler alert for the first 3 episodes. So in episode 1, a whole new world. After making a miraculous recovery, Peacemaker returns home only to discover that his freedom comes at a price. And already we're thrown back into this world, one that was established so well in the Suicide Squad. It has James Gunn literally and the credits written all over it, but episode 1 provides us so many things that maybe I was looking for in the Suicide Squad and didn't quite get. Now, you guys know how I feel about the Suicide Squad. It's, in my opinion, an amazing movie, in my top 10 of last year, but the one kind of criticism that I had with the Suicide Squad was I don't know if the humor entirely worked. It did for the most part for me. I like that juvenile, ridiculous, R-rated humor and the one-liners and kind of the awkwardness that comes from the characters, and Peacemaker being the character for me that delivered some of those more awkward lines, but they're supposed to be that. They're supposed to be on the nose at times. So I like the fact that Cena just kind of effortlessly plays this character and fits into this role in a way that makes me look at him and say, yeah, he's like the perfect guy to lead a superhero show or anti-hero show like this. Now, when it comes to, and we'll get into the episode here in just a second, when it comes to just making a show about Peacemaker from the Suicide Squad, out of all the characters that we had, at first I was cautious. I was hesitating to say that I was really excited for this because you have someone like Idris Elba, who may be a bit, well, you know what? He's done a lot of TV in his day, but he's a very busy guy. So I'm like, okay, they could go with his character. You could obviously do something like Harley Quinn, but at the same time, you have to look at one of the more supporting characters, and I think Peacemaker fits that perfectly, and he was a character that I really, really loved in the Suicide Squad. So even with my hesitation, I went into this saying, I'm going to give it a chance. We'll see if it pays off. Let's watch 1 episode and see what happens. And then you also have the crew of these side characters, a couple of new guys and girls along the way, but a crew that I wasn't just raving about when I came out of the Suicide Squad. I loved the team that was formed. I loved Amanda Waller's presence, and this was kind of the crew that went up against Amanda Waller at a point. So I like the savvy that comes from that, but they are part of my criticism, saying that humor wasn't completely there, right? One of my only complaints from that film. In this show, it actually comes across a lot better, and each character, and I'm talking every individual character surrounding Peacemaker, gets something to do, gets a line of dialogue or several interactions that make me sit back and say, you know what, I'm glad they were included in this show, and I also think that was the right way to go. Clemson has this hard exterior. He's emotionless. There's a conversation in the woods where he talks about how he has never conveyed emotion, and he's trying to make up for his past. Amelia Harcourt is a character that has a very interesting past, what led her to work for this organization in the first place, and now that relationship with Peacemaker, and one that I'm still not entirely sure where she falls emotionally. That could be one of the more interesting things going forward. John is great. He's kind of the tech guy, the brilliant guy that stays in the background for the most part, but some of his humor was really on the nose, I think more so than the other characters, but it worked extremely well. But there are also some things that he does in these first 3 episodes. It's like, you're so smart, but you're going to do that, like you're going to frame his father out of all people, which was so ridiculous, but it puts his dad's character, played by Robert Patrick, who is Augie, in just a crazy situation going forward. He's a horrible, horrible person, and that causes some daddy issues with Peacemaker, and that's what kind of starts to mess with Peacemaker, along with everything that he's dealing with, the idea of taking a life, wanting to do the best thing, and in this show, he's even trying to refrain from being the Peacemaker that he's used to being. He's trying to be a better person. So when he's lined up in episode 3, or maybe episode 2, about to take the shot, not only killing who he sees as a mother and a father, but taking the 2 kids out as well, and his partner having to come in and do that for him, all of these things are coming together, culminating, and creating for way more of a fascinating character than I ever anticipated with Peacemaker. So that was really nice. And I cannot forget about Leota, who is just, I love this character so much. She's hilarious. It's my absolute favorite conversations to come from another character and Peacemaker. And I just, every time she's on screen, I know we're going to get some sort of line of dialogue that sticks with me or makes me laugh. So the crew is genuinely great. Then we have Adrian, who is like if they took all of the humanity out of Deadpool, because as crazy and wacky and on the nose as Deadpool is, there is humanity there, but it doesn't feel like there is a lot with this character. He's hilarious, don't get me wrong, but I couldn't help but to think the first time he spoke, I'm like, oh, it's their version of Deadpool, but he's not breaking the fourth wall. I'm okay with that, because his relationship with Peacemaker is hilarious. The first time he shows up at the window, after the voicemails that he was leaving, of course, he's like, come on, man. And the dirty conversation that they have is funny, but, you know, at the same time, you automatically know what their relationship is. You know how he feels about Adrian. You understand that there's a lot that's going to come from this relationship, whether it be going up or down. But then you see him kind of take over the situation I was talking earlier, and taking that shot, killing 3 of the 4 family members. I'm like, ooh, is that going to start causing some conflict in the future between these 2 characters? Because while Peacemaker is at that point in his life where he doesn't know if he can take the shot. You hired a killer that can't even kill? What are you doing, Amanda? This other guy's coming in, and he's doing it. So that's a very interesting conflict that I thoroughly enjoyed. You also have the introduction of Judo Master in that 3rd episode. And it's just like, what? Oh, and I can't forget about Eagly, who is voiced by D. Bradley Baker, by the way, one of my favorites. Eagly's great. Like, you always have to have that cute animal or animated character, and that's the cute animal/animated character in this show. So that was awesome. So all of the characters, I mean, that's what makes this show move. Obviously, James Gunn and his direction, the stylistic elements that come with it, the pacing and the music in the background is great. Some of the cinematography, the violent moments that we get in that first episode when Cena, you know, doing what he's doing, and then he's attacked by who he was doing, and that is a violent, bloody, crazy. I mean, how can a man get stabbed that many times and survive? But he does, because he's a big, brooding man. So you see him at his strongest, but you also see him at his weakest, both from an emotional, psychological standpoint, when he's dealing with all of these issues and the fallout with his dad, which we heard a lot about in the Suicide Squad. Now we're finally getting to see that, and of course the perfect casting there. But physically, when he's jumping out of the hotel after he has a great conversation with that couple, who I guess is not a couple anymore because we see him sleeping with that character a little bit later on. But yeah, not very agile, not very mobile. We see him jump from balcony to balcony. There are vulnerable moments there. And of course, when we see him just losing it, crying on his bed, just talking about how people don't like him. And we get a lot of callbacks too. Not only do we get callbacks to other DC projects, Aquaman, Harley Quinn, Weasel, new things that we haven't seen before in this universe. Apparently, Batmite is a thing in this universe. That was a description. I don't know if that's like a creation or a comic within that. We're getting really meta here within this DC universe, but it feels like Batmite is real because the guy was really serious when he was talking about it. So that was pretty cool. But he also talks about Rick Flag at a point and saying, I knew what he was saying was right. You killed Rick Flag, Peacemaker. What a joke. That's what he kind of whispers to himself. And that moment for me, I'm like, oh, it's a great arc for this character, along with the silliness, the ridiculousness, and saying what's on their minds. These characters, they'll just continue to talk and say things, and then they will acknowledge when they say something stupid, or someone else in the room will, and that's where the dialogue feels really natural. Now, you know, being all jokey in a moment of distress, that's not always going to happen, but it all comes down to the tone of a show, and I believe this show has a tone. It sticks to it. It maintains that, and each character having their different emotion about them that stands out. And even someone as grizzled and dark as Clemson, he'll have moments that maybe he doesn't mean to be funny, but it comes across as funny because of his line delivery. And I also love looking at that introduction. These characters that would never in a million years go through this dance number with a just complete stagnant, no smile at all on their face, kind of moving to the beat. It's great. It shows you immediately know what kind of show this is going to be with that introduction. I think that was a brilliant move from James Gunn. Clearly, we have a lot of huge questions at the end of these 3 episodes. All hail the White Dragon. I mean, it's very evident what that means, but he is a bad person, and he's going to cause a lot of conflict later on. But the real kicker with this show is the Butterfly Project. What does this mean? You know, Peacemaker keeps asking. They're not telling him for a reason. What does butterfly even mean? And then we see at the end, and this is not something I recall from the comics, and even after doing some research, I can't really find anything, so I guess it's brand new for this show, but it almost feels like what happened in Starro, this hive-minded concept with these parasite-type creatures, and it looks like that butterfly thing is some sort of parasite. So it's untelling who they're going to bring in that is behind this. I mean, the one that comes to mind for me is someone like a Killer Moth. But Killer Moth never did anything like this in the comics. I could also go to someone like a Mongol, who is really diving deep, but that's more Superman lore, even though Superman is part of this universe. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't know necessarily who they're going to go with, but I feel like the main villain, once we find out who that is, beyond his dad, of course, but with the butterfly experience that we're getting, it's going to be a big, famous, and familiar name. So what are my overall thoughts on these first 3 episodes? Again, I think the humor really, really works here. There were some moments where it does slow down and we're having conversations that I do wish would have picked up the pace just a little bit. I believe the biggest issue people are going to have is the tone with the show, but if you get 10 minutes into the first episode and it's just not vibing with you, you're not laughing at all, or you don't even have to be laughing. If you're not giggling, that's the point where most people will say, oh, it's not a show for me. And it doesn't have to be a show for you. I think Peacemaker is going to appeal to a very specific audience comedically, but the overall tone of the show is going to work and impress a lot of people. And that's what I appreciate from James Gunn. And I have to give props to John Cena here too. Cena does a great job. I'm so happy with what I'm seeing from him. His line delivery is perfection. And I'm not sitting back here saying he's the best actor in Hollywood and he's going to win an Oscar one day, but he fits this character perfectly. He is perfect for Peacemaker. So you love to see it. So those are kind of my thoughts on the first 3 episodes. If I had to score it right now, I would probably go right at the 8 mark, 80% with these first 3. I just really enjoyed myself. It isn't perfect. A few of the moments went on a bit too long. I'm still trying to get on board with the pacing in its entirety, but for the most part, it flew by. I wanted to watch 1 episode, and I watched all 3. So appreciate you guys for watching and asking for this review, encouraging me to do it and bring it to you all. So I really do appreciate that. And that being said, if you'd like to support this video and my channel in general, go check out my Scream review, which dropped last night, and stay tuned for a very special ranking this weekend. I'll see you later.